Hi, welcome to Homemaker Living. Thanks for joining me. My name is Teresa, and today I'm going to be planting 2 varieties of Nantes carrots. So let's start with the varieties that I grow. So I've been gardening for about 17 years, but probably more seriously with an actual garden setup for about 14 years. And I always struggled with carrots. I couldn't get them to germinate, and I kind of gave up on them for a few years. And then I think it's been in the last 7 years or so, I learned a trick to get them to germinate, and it's worked every year. So actually I've had pretty good success since then. In my last garden, I had really shallow beds, and underneath them I had hardware cloth to keep the voles or the moles from coming up underneath them. And so I was kind of limited on the size of carrot I could grow. I did grow some short stubby ones at first, and I didn't really like those. And then when I was perusing the Territorial Seed catalog, I ran across their Nantes variety, and that appealed to me because of the size and what they had to say about it. So I went ahead and picked those up, and I've always had really good success with them. They only grow 6 to 7 inches. They are super crisp. They have a little bit of a core inside of them, and they store for a good long time. So I haven't really had a desire to change since I started growing those, except this year I decided to go ahead and get the Territorial Seed variety. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this right. It looks like it says Negovia, Negovia. And I ordered some seeds from MIGardner and ran across that they had a Nantes version, which is Scarlett. So I grabbed those as well. And I'm going to grow them obviously separate, and then I'll be able to compare them to see how they stack up to each other. Both of the descriptions on each of the packets are very similar. They talk about them being fine, crisp texture, sweet flavor, long storage, 6 to 7 inches long. And the Territorial Seed actually says that they're vigorous, they're disease resistant, and they have about 11 to 12 inch tops. So, and that's what I experienced when I grew them. Last year I grew them in a bed just like this. I shared the bed with my celery last year, and I'll do the same, except I'm going to increase my celery volume this year to, I think, 12 to 15 heads of celery. I will go ahead and plant the rest of the bed with the carrots. So it'll be about 2/3 of the bed. And last year I did go ahead and plant a row on each side of the irrigation line. So I had 6 rows of carrots. I have in the past had smaller areas where I've just broadcast them, and I had sprayers that could kind of reach all of them. But in this arrangement, I decided to use the row method so that I could ensure that they would get the water. And I wasn't even sure how well they would water being 8 inches apart, the emitters, but they did fine. So after I planted them, I drew a trough, and then I painstakingly planted them. I didn't like just pour them in there because I didn't want to waste any seed, and I didn't want to have to do a lot of thinning. And then after they were about that high, I went through and I thinned them out like every other one, and just tossed those into the compost. And then I thinned 2 more times. The second time I had some decent little mini carrots that we used in salads and munched on. And then the third thinning actually had some good sized carrots that we just started eating through the season. So I felt like I had carrots really from almost May until September, October, when I took them all out. So I'm going to use that same method this year since it worked for me. I mean, why change it, right? And then the only difference is I'm growing 2 different ones. So I'll go ahead and make my rows and get to getting those seeds in the ground. So I marked where I might start my celery, which is from this area back. That gives me enough to do 12 to 16 of them. So I'll just try to get it kind of close. Move that over just a tad bit so that my rows are straight. Pretty simple. I've got a lot of compost here on the top, so really that's all I'm moving. And then it's pretty dry. Maybe I should have watered it first, but I'll water it in after I plant them. You don't have to plant them very deep. Right, and I'll do the other two. So putting the seed in took all of 7, maybe 10 minutes. You know, it's a little bit tedious trying to spread it out, but it works fine that way. And then what I did was I went through and I sprinkled a little bit of this fish bone meal on each of the rows. It'll give them a little bit more of what they need at the very beginning. As I've mentioned in previous videos, my nitrogen was low in my soil, so I did go ahead and hit everything with some nitrogen. But I do like to feed a little bit of the source of the type of vegetable that I'm planting. So it's a root vegetable, and they could benefit from more phosphorus, helps promote root growth. So I went ahead and sprinkled a little bit of that in there, and I think that'll be fine just in the beginning. I'll wait till they emerge and see how they're doing before I decide if they're suffering at all or if I need to feed them with anything else. My phosphorus and potassium were good, so I don't want to overdo it, because you can overdo it with amendments, so we just want to play it safe. Sometimes what I'll do when something looks like it might be struggling, I'll give it some instant food, and this is a particular product I bought last year that is low. I think it's like a 323, and it just gives them instantly what they need. I've had some things bounce back pretty good. Last year I planted butternut squash, and it was only producing male flowers, and I got halfway through the season and I had no female flowers. So I read a little bit about it, and it said it could be lacking food, which I'm not always great about feeding everything as the season goes. I'm going to get better at that. But so I went ahead and hit it with this, and within, oh gosh, a week, I had female flowers coming out, and I finally got, at the end of the season, maybe only 6 butternut squash, but it was better than nothing. So I have been using this diluted. You have to dilute it in water, especially on little seedlings. It's like a quarter of the amount diluted in water, so you don't want to shock them. But so just read the instructions and follow what it says. But most people that I've seen using a liquid fertilizer always dilute it when they're feeding something. So I always err on the side of caution and really dilute it. I've spent a lot of time growing all my seedlings, and the last thing I want to do is feed them and kill them. So at any rate, so I'll use that if I need to on anything that needs a little bit of a bump. So now I'm going to go ahead and just cover them up. The package says 1/4 of an inch, and I think by the time I do that and pat it down, it'll be about 1/4 of an inch. Is what I did last year. So what I do is I just kind of enclose it like you're closing a zipper almost, and pat it down. And then after that, I will give it some water, because they need to have good soil contact and water, and you want to keep them moist. So I'll just go through and finish all the rows real quick. Okay, I got those all covered up. So I'm just going to label them on these inside rows. So I know that Scarlett is over here, and this Negovia, whatever it is over here. Now I'm just going to water them in a little bit, and then I'll show you my little trick. You probably already know about part of this trick, but maybe not the full trick. So I'm going to water them in. This is my new waterer I just got. I've been wanting to get one of these dram waterers. They have these heads that have hundreds of holes in them, and so it gives them a nice little shower. And I haven't been able to find them. They've been sold out. And then I went shopping with a girlfriend last week to some in the country, rural nursery, and they had some, so I grabbed one. So as you can see, it gives it such a nice little shower. Just get them good and watered so they have good soil contact. When I get done with this, I should show you one of my celeries. I started growing celery last year, and I didn't know, if I'd be successful. Sometimes you're just not the first year around on certain things. And oh, it grew so nicely and it was so beautiful. This feels good to get the carrots in since I'm a little behind on that. I do a little something every day in the garden. Plant something, weed something, fix something. I feel like I'm being productive. And with this size of a garden, I kind of have to do something every day or I can get kind of behind. Okay, so I got these good and wet here. So now I'm going to show you the normal covering that most people will suggest. So maybe you've seen this before, maybe you haven't, but I'm going to show you 4 different methods, I guess. So some people will tell you after you plant your carrots to cover them with a board. Of course, with the irrigation, I probably would have to be on the side like this. Cover them with a board, keep them moist, check them, water them. And I think carrots germinate usually, just off of memory, like about 10 days, I think. So you do have to check them often. If it's warmer, they may germinate sooner. Anyway, so some people will use a board. I've used a board before when I first learned this hack, but if you don't check them every day and then you get to the point where they start germinating, then they're all squished. You could use something like if you had a bigger piece, if you didn't have maybe the irrigation like this, but you had a bigger piece of flat board, you could cover a larger section all at once instead of individual boards. And you could probably even do it like that. It could sit on top. If this fit over the whole area, you could just fit it on top. It's just to keep that soil moist. So you can do that. And then some people use cardboard, but you probably have to put something on top of it to hold it down if you get wind like we do. However, I learned this hack, I don't know, a few years ago, and it works like a charm. So I have these old ratty burlap sheets that came, pieces of material that came on, I think, some plants that we bought. So my husband took them off and washed them off, and I just use them in the garden when I need shading or covering. And so I started to use them on my carrots. And the beauty of this is you can water right over the burlap. You don't have to move it and remove it like you do the wood. So, of course, you want to check like you would the others. So I got that pretty well covered. I overlap them just a little bit, some of my landscape staples to hold them down. Just kind of work it through. We get some good winds here, and one, it makes it difficult to film because I hate filming and having you have to listen to that windiness. I'm always taking my chimes down. Sometimes I forget. It's just so noisy. So just work it through the burlap. Okay, this corner. Okay, so now all covered. It's not heavy. It's not going to squish them like it does wood. And then you can just water right over the burlap. If it rains, it goes right through it. You can just come over and sprinkle it every other day if it's hot out, if it's warm out, without having to remove everything. And then I watch the germination days. I'll start peeking. And as soon as I see any green emerging, I take them off and then just keep them watered. And hasn't failed me yet. And I really love this method. So if you can get your hands on some burlap, I think they sell it at fabric stores, right? So get your hands on some burlap. It'll be in better condition than this stuff. And then you'll be golden with getting your carrots to germinate. I thought I would just pop in here from the future because I forgot to share a couple of minor details with you. Carrots love to grow in loose, lofty soil. So if your soil is compact, you want to loosen that up. Whether that's turning it over, which I don't recommend, or using a broad fork to loosen it up, I would do that. And then you also want to water deeply. Carrots will dive down for that moisture, so you have nice long carrots versus short stubby ones if you just water at the surface. I've actually had to water my seeds every day since I planted them. It's really dry here, not very humid, and so it is wicking that water up very quickly. And so anyway, so I've been out here checking them every day, making sure that they stay moist. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. So the very last thing I do with my carrot bed after they start to emerge is I actually, in this location, I cover them. I've never covered my carrots before, but we moved rather far away from where we used to be, and I had heard they can get infested with carrot fly maggots, and that didn't sound appealing to me. So I thought I didn't want to take the chance. So I went ahead and covered them with some little hoops and an ad cloth. So it is not a frost cloth, it's an ad cloth fabric that is penetrable by water, by rain. You can see through it, it gets good sun. So I went ahead and covered them. If I have a picture of that, I'll throw it in here. Just to ensure. And of course I covered the celery too because it was in the same bed. And I did not have a problem with the carrot fly maggot. The coverage, the dome worked for me last year, so I'll just continue to do that. But you can look it up and see if you have that issue in your area. I just know I didn't want any maggots in my carrots. So, all right, that'll do it for this carrot video. If you found it useful, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. I don't know what I'm going to be doing next. I might do something with my trees, my fruit trees. I'll have to look at my calendar, but something will be coming down the pipeline in the garden. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate your time. See you next time. Bye. Just kidding, video's not over yet. I forgot to show you my celery. Isn't that cute? Can't believe I can grow celery.